Okay, well, I'd like to apologise before I get started for my voice. I suppose generally I'd like to apologise for my voice, but specifically in terms of this video. In fact, I'm slightly concerned that there might be a DMCA incoming from Rod Stewart somewhere down the line for this one. I need to try and remain calm given my voice, which is going to be difficult because this is a subject that I feel very passionately about, and it's this subject of no platforming at universities. And this particular recent example, this particularly egregious example, concerns the University of Manchester and Manchester Students' Union. And one of the organisations at Manchester University that falls under the remit of the Student Union submitted a list of speakers for an event that is due to take place on the 15th of October. Last Monday the 5th of October, the Student Union responded to say that one of the speakers, the radical feminist activist Julie Bindel, had been banned from speaking. So what I want to do first off is to read you a post that was left on Facebook explaining the reasons why by Jess Lishak, who is the women's officer. And I know that there'll be some people rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, women's officer." Listen, at universities in the United Kingdom, women make up the majority of students, and women actually have slightly better results on average than male students. So I think they've done enough to justify an officer of their own, don't you? So, okay, this is what Jess Lishak had to say. This is not about shutting down conversations or denying free speech. This is about keeping our students safe. If we were about silencing people we happen to disagree with or avoiding uncomfortable conversations, we would be denying the application for Milo Yiannopoulos to speak. Yiannopoulos is a professional misogynist. So that was the position of Manchester Students' Union on Monday the 5th of October, that they were flaunting their free speech credentials, their commitment to free speech, by pointing out that even though they regard Milo Yiannopoulos as somebody who hates women and espouses these views of hatred towards women, they weren't banning him for those views. Fast forward 2 days now to Wednesday the 7th of October, the Facebook page disappears. Why? Because they banned Milo Yiannopoulos for his comments towards women. Now, just before I get onto the meat and drink of this video, it's really interesting to note, maybe tells you something about Manchester Students' Union. If you go and have a look at the statements that Julie Bindel has made towards men over the years, she is league after league after league beyond anything that Milo has said. In fact, in a recent statement, she points out that she would like women to hold all the men of the world in camps, to be guarded by wardens to make sure they stay in there and don't look at any porn, and they're only allowed out of those camps once men, talk about dehumanizing, can learn to be human beings. But none of that figured in their decision. Student unions seemingly were unconcerned about any of that. Their concern with Julie Bindel was the fact that she says some pretty nasty things about transgender people. Okay, so why is all of this particularly important? You're going to love this one. The organisation that was going to hold the event was the Manchester University Free Speech and Secular Society, and the subject that was going to be discussed was From Liberation to Censorship. Does modern feminism have a problem with free speech? Now, there's probably some real irony that they're going to have that discussion, then it ends up with two of the people being no platformed. But there's actually a really serious subject really to be discussed here, and that's what I want to go into in this video. So let me try and explain what is going on here. Imagine that the discussion was going to be about trans issues and the Students' Union banned Julie Bindel. Imagine it was going to be about gender issues and the Students' Union decided to ban Milo Yiannopoulos. Many of us would have problems with that, because if you want to have those discussions, then you need dissenting voices. You need voices from all sides of the discussion to be able to hold those discussions. But notwithstanding that issue, those are things which can be walked back. How do you walk such things back? By having a discussion about discussions. And that is what this discussion was. It is in effect a meta discussion. It was a discussion about how we go about having our discussions, and that makes discussions about censorship, free speech and no platforming very, very special. And it makes the actions of Manchester Students' Union especially abhorrent here. This effectively amounts to is disenfranchisement from the debating process. And bear in mind, these are two people, Julie and Milo, who would be dissenting voices, strongly averse to the censorship and no platforming policies of people like Manchester Students' Union. And this is the kind of thing that we always have to be really guarded against. Think about governments. Governments can do lots and lots of things that we really object to, but we always have that ultimate recourse, don't we, which is the ballot box, which is the democratic process that we can take part in. But once our governments actually start messing about with that democratic process itself, start saying, well, actually, no, you can't have a vote. There's no way back. You cannot walk that position back because you can't take part in the process that would allow you to walk that position back. And so it is with this process. If you can't take part in a discussion about censorship, then what do? Do you have a discussions about censorship, but you won't be allowed to take part in that either? So then we have to have a discussions about censorship. We're disappearing down the rabbit hole and getting absolutely nowhere. And that's why discussions of this nature have a very, very special place, and why I find it really, really objectionable, the actions of Manchester Students' Union here. Of course, Manchester Students' Union will cower behind their safe space policy, but let me tell you something, Manchester Students' Union, if your safe space policy informs you that you should block speakers from a discussion about no platforming, censorship and free speech, then it's the safe space policy that needs to go. It's not the speakers that need to go. Universities should include safe spaces. This is one of the things that differs from when I was at university 20 years ago. There weren't safe spaces at university. That is one of the things that has improved at universities and that I applaud. Universities should include safe spaces, but universities should not be safe spaces. They should not be intellectually safe spaces. In fact, the exact opposite. If a university isn't a place where you have your views challenged, then I don't know where is. And this is the real tragedy of all of this, because it is a vanishingly small window in anybody's life. Look, I am past it, right? I am just a hollow husk. I try and be as open-minded to views and to change as I can. And I can change, and my opinions can change, but it's a glacially slow process now, because the window is shut for me. There is this window of opportunity in everybody's life. Until you get to about 17 or 18, you simply don't know enough complexity about the really important, the real issues of the day to be able to formulate your opinions. That is why people on YouTube who have accounts and they start them off with a 16, 17 usually end up cringing and deleting all their earliest videos. Once you get to the ages 18, 19, 20, 21, that is when you start to know enough, know a little bit of the nuance about these things, and start to learn about different points of view and put them all together, mesh them together, and make your opinions. But that window snaps shut way too early. It's a shame. It's part of the human condition. It's why a lot of scientists, their best work is conducted while they're in the 20s and early 30s and not when they are older. So that is what makes this action by Manchester Students' Union especially depressing. This is a time when the students should be able to avail themselves of as many different opinions, including the objectionable ones, including the ones that are going to make them feel uncomfortable, that are going to make them challenge their preconceptions and challenge the arguments that they use in the present. But none of that is going to happen now. Why? Because effectively Manchester Students' Union want their politics to be everybody's politics on the campus. Now, I don't expect Manchester Students' Union really to listen to what I have to say. I'm sure I'm not their cup of tea. But somebody that might be their cup of tea, of course, is Kate Brooks, who we've discussed recently, because because she's very much on board with these issues, and she sees the danger in these kind of viewpoints that Milo and Julie would espouse, and yet this is what Kate had to say to me. I also think that it's a fallacy to assume that we've now, as a society, come to an end point of discourse where we can correctly decide what constitutes offence whilst previous generations could not. It would, therefore, seem to me an error to start restricting freedom of speech on the basis of offence, given the nature of what we find offensive is likely to change significantly over time. Similarly, there doesn't appear to me to be any reasonable mechanism by which we can decide whose offence we conceive as legitimate and whose as illegitimate. I think that's beautifully worded by Kate Brooks, but Manchester Students' Union clearly think differently. This slogan that I've placed under their title, that's not their official slogan, but this is my recommendation for them going forwards. We think so you don't have to. And why do I say that? Because however unpalatable it may seem what Julie and Milo have to say, surely all of us would agree that it would be unconscionable for us to ban them from saying it if what they were saying was actually true. So it's implicit in the actions of Manchester Students' Union that they are making a judgment call, that they are making a claim of objective truth here, that we don't need to have the debate, that they've had the debate on our behalf, they've done the thinking so their fellow students don't have to, and they've decided that objectively what Julie and Milo have to say is wrong. And what I finally want to finish with, I think, is some suggestions. Take them for what they are. The first one is for Manchester Students' Union. What you could have done instead of banning people, and still can, because I know this event has been put on hold and it's being challenged by the Free Speech and Secular Society, rather than banning speakers, was to look at all the speakers as a whole and pick out the speakers that you had problems with. So you'd pick out Julie Bindel and her attitude towards transgender people, that you'd pick out Milo Yiannopoulos and his attitude towards women, and say, are there other speakers there who, if they bring these subjects up, will be able to challenge them, who will be able to tackle the points that they make and counter the arguments that they make? You know what the real irony is? With regard to Milo and his attitudes towards women, you already had the perfect person there to tackle him in Julie Bindel, but fuck, you decided to ban her. She was the perfect person. She doesn't take any shit. She would have tackled anything that Milo would have said with regard to women and gender issues, right? So why didn't you look at that? Perhaps there was nobody that could tackle Julie Bindel, so perhaps you could have said, we're fine with you having these speakers, but what you need to do is to include somebody on that panel who can tackle Julie Bindel if she gets into these areas that are subjects of concern for us. Wouldn't that have been a much more progressive way of handling this, rather than banning and blocking and no platforming people? And finally, to the good people of Manchester Free Speech and Secular Society, I stand right behind you. I know that at the moment you are challenging the Students' Union to see if you can get the decision overturned. Good luck with that. But if it isn't successful, please don't go ahead with the debate. There's something really, really strange about holding a debate on censorship when the two people that would have been most vigorous in their condemnation of the people that are censoring you have been blocked from taking part in the debate by that very organisation. Instead, I suggest that you make a political statement out of this. Cancel the debate, turn up at the venue on the night and hang a sign on the door that says debate over, no platforming, and censorship cancelled due to no platforming and censorship. Thanks for watching. Take care. Oh, wake up, Maggie. I think I've got something to say to you.